This is an interview video, and in this video you can see Father Peter Cameron interviewing Professor Joseph P.S. Father Peter Cameron is a Dominican priest, and he is editor-in-chief of the spiritual magazine The Magnificat. Professor Joseph P.S. is the author of the book Death Comes for the War Poets. Unfortunately, I couldn't record the complete interview. In this video, Professor Joseph P.S. explaining about his painful past, the peaceful present, and the hopeful future.
I had to pray the rosary. She just took, when her mother died, my grandmother died, she just took them as a keepsake, as a memento. But my father came home and said, we're not having these rosary beads in the house, and threw them out the window. But the second day of my prison sentence, I find myself holding these rosary beads. And I have to this day no idea how I got them. I'm not saying they dropped magically from heaven into my lap. But I don't remember how I got them. But I'm holding these rosary beads the second day of the prison sentence. And I could have thrown them out the window. The window had bars on it, so I couldn't climb out the window, but I could throw things out. But I had no desire to throw the rosary beads out the window. What I had was a great desire to pray. I'm 24 years old. I've never prayed in my life. But there's a problem, right? I don't know the Hail Mary. I don't know the Glory Be. I don't know the Apostles' Creed. And I had been taught the Our Father when I was, about that high, but had long since forgotten it. So how does one, thus handicapped, say the Rosary? Well, with great difficulty. But what I did was to fumble the beads and mumble inarticulate prayers. And answers started to rush in, healing started to rush in. I had a great desire to become a Catholic. I started to go to Mass during that second prison sentence. And when I got out of prison, I knew I had to make a clean break for my whole life. Because, if you're in something from the age of 15, I'm now 25, I don't know anybody who's not involved in the radical politics. Within the movement, I'm a hero. I'm a martyr. I've been to prison twice. Outside the movement, I'm a pariah. These prison sentences made front page news headlines. So I'm hated outside, loved inside. It would have been much easier to stay in. Except, of course, it was impossible to stay in. Because I didn't believe it anymore. So I had to take the plunge into the world beyond, and a couple of years later when I was received into the Catholic Church. So that's the short version.
It's awesome. So it's really the Blessed Mother who brought you back.
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, at first, as with Chesterton, I had all the anti-Catholic, although I wasn't a Christian, I wasn't a Protestant, I was nothing.
Yeah.
I had all the anti-Catholic prejudices against the Blessed Virgin, the Pope, all the usual stuff, as Chesterton did. But actually, once I started moving towards the church, I had just developed a great love for the Blessed Virgin. And after I moved to Norfolk in England, when I escaped from London, that's where the shrine of Our Lady of Walsingham is in England. And I would go there many, many weekends. That was my destination, my pilgrimage destination weekends. And she and I formed a very special relationship.
Now I can tell from your accent that you're from South Carolina.
Yeah. Good, aren't they? Yes. Congratulations.
That's what I do.
That's what you do? Yeah. Oh, don't give up the day job, Father. I say to my neighbours, we live sort of down a dirt track in rural South Carolina, and I say to my redneck neighbours that my wife and I are as southern as they are. She's from Southern California, I'm from Southern England. What's the problem?
How did you get to America?
When I met Susanna, my wife, in Oxford, in England, she was over for a summer programme, and I was the resident tutor for the third week. So, we got to know each other a bit, and then continued the relationship via correspondence. And then when we got married, she moved to England. But I applied for a job at Ave Maria College, as it then was, in Michigan, before I moved to Florida. So 2 weeks after we got back from our honeymoon, which was in Rome, and our marriage was blessed by St. John Paul II, so we got off to a flying start. So about 2 weeks after we got back from my honeymoon, I was offered the job in the States and took it, and I've been here now for 17 years.
And now you're moving to the Augustine Institute as the senior editor. Just tell us a little bit what that is.
Yeah, the Augustine Institute is based out of Denver, Colorado, and it's really become, it started out really as a Master's in Theology program, but it's actually become a multimedia enterprise, threatening to become an empire. It produces radio dramas, movies, book publishes books. It's taken over the Lighthouse Media thing, which I'm sure many of you know. Has a sort of collaborative relationship with Ignatius Press. So does all sorts of exciting things. So I'm going to be on board there as of July the 1st. That's my new position.
Now, I hear through the grapevine that you have a new theater piece. Is this so?
Yeah.
I heard this.
You heard this?
Yeah.
Yes, actually, it's very, very exciting, and it's thanks to this man. God bless him.
And I want to hear about it because I'm producing it, but, you know, I didn't read it. So, I mean, it's being produced somewhere around here, is that right?
Very close. I think next floor down. No, two floors down.
So not too much of a commute.
Not too, from here, no, actually.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, basically it's called Death Comes for the War Poets, and I do hope you all make a point of coming to see it, because I'd love it to be a success.
Buy the book.
Buy the book as well. It's at the back there. I've discovered, by the way, in giving talks, this is a bit different because it's a discussion, but I imagine the same thing applies, that Americans get very uncomfortable if every 10 minutes you don't give them a commercial break. so this is the first commercial break. The books are available for sale at the back there, and please don't take a look. And the other thing you have to realise, whenever you come to any event that I'm involved with, there's two of the cardinal virtues are overrated, all right? Prudence and temperance. Forget them, right? Spend more than you can afford, all right? Buy one for every member of the family. But actually, Death Comes to the War Poets, the genesis of the idea for it, I wrote a book years ago, back in the 1990s, when I still lived in England, called Literary Converts. And it's basically a history of the Catholic cultural revival in the UK. And since then, I've written sort of biographies of individual stars of that revival, so Chesterton and Belloc and Roy Campbell and others. And I've always had in my mind I'd like to write a biography of Siegfried Sassoon, the war poet, who becomes a Catholic as an old man. He's about 71 years old. But his whole life and all of his poetry seemed to be a journey towards conversion, as if everything is this quest for the goal, which is to be basically to enter the mystical body of Jesus Christ, the church. So I had this desire to write the book, and then I had this thought about, he speaks for himself. If I could just arrange all of his work, well, not all of his work, there's selections from his work, with abridging it with prose of my own to tell the story, and it would be sort of, if you like, a sort of autobiography. And that never happened either. It was just an idea, and then all of a sudden, and it really was almost a mystical thing that happened, is that I'd done my day's work for the day. We'd had our evening prayers, and I'd put our son to bed, and it just happened. Basically, that this verse tapestry, this verse drama, which we're having performed here, poured out of me in about 3 hours. And it's basically tells the story of Siegfried Sassoon from when he's, no spoilers allowed, right?
No spoilers.
No spoilers allowed. So I'll rephrase all of that. It basically tells Siegfried Sassoon's journey. So there's only 3 characters in the drama. Siegfried Sassoon, and we see him basically as a young man before World War I, then in the trenches, and then as he moves forward through his life, through World War II, etc., and after. And then his friendship with another of the war poets, Wilfred Owen, another great poet. So it looks at their friendship, and then what happens there. Not much I can say, but it is there. I'm spoiling anything. No. But the third character, and I think this is what makes it very intriguing, is the spirit of death. So the third character is a female character, and she's death. So that allows the whole thing to take on a metaphysical dimension all the way through. The lives are not just facts in a physical sense, there's a spiritual struggle going on. And so it serves as, in medieval art and medieval literature, the memento mori, the reminder of death, was a central part of it. And this whole thing, in one sense, is a memento mori. And the memento mori, theologically, is meant to point us to the 4 last things: death, judgment, heaven, and hell. So I hope the work on one level, that's what it does. But if I'm not allowed to give any spoilers, that's about all I can say.
But I confess to you that history is not my strong suits. And the play, the theater piece is written to commemorate several significant anniversaries of the First World War. But could you say something to us about your own perception of the atrocity that event was, and just help us to understand the context in which your dramas played out?
Yeah, well, I'll answer the question you didn't ask first, and I'll answer the one you did ask.
Okay.
The anniversaries. So one of the things that did inspire my writing it when I did just last year is that this 2017 is the centenary of the United States entry into World War One. It's also the centenary of Siegfried Sassoon's Soldier's Declaration, which basically where he very courageously, some would say foolhardily, issued a declaration against the war on the basis that it no longer was a just war, and he could have got himself shot for that. So it's the centenary of that, 2017 also. And then in 1957, so 60 years ago, was when he was received into the Catholic Church. And 1967, 50 years ago, was when he died. So this sort of, if you like, congruence, coherence, if you like, of these anniversaries was one of the things that inspired me to write it. So what was your question now?
I can't remember. What makes World War I so different from other wars? I mean, every war is atrocious.
Yeah.
But there's something really bestial.
Yeah, I mean, basically raised the curtain on the 20th century, and those of us that believe in sort of some inexorable human progress, in other words, that the past is always barbaric and the future is always moving forward towards a golden age, how anybody can still hold to that belief after the horrors of the 20th century beggars belief. And World War I was the first great war of the machines. So now prior to that, you had to have skill with arms, and your own muscles, your own skill was involved. You saw the whites of your enemy's eyes. You had to have the courage to engage them. With World War I, people were just being slaughtered by the tens of thousands by new technology, like by machine guns, by poison gas, mustard gas, by tanks, by aeroplanes. So it was the first great war of the machine, and I think in terms of poetry, because obviously this is about poets, it really signalled the death of what we might call the poetry of war glorified. So, poetry such as Alfred Lord Tennyson's Charge of the Light Brigade, I don't know if you know that, but in the Crimean War there was an error made, and the Light Brigade cavalry charged against a heavily guarded Russian defence, and 90% of them were killed. And so the courage of that, even though it was an error, half a league onward into the valley of death rode the 600. And again, in 1911, just before World War I, G.K. Chesterton wrote his poem Lepanto about the historic naval victory by the Christian fleet against the Turks. And again, it's a war glorified. But it was impossible to write such poetry about World War I because it was gruesome. So the war poetry, which is featured in the drama, it really shows graphically the horrors of what the soldiers had to deal with in the trenches of World War I.
I remember when I was in high school, I was 1846. We were talking about World War I and how literature changed overnight. I mean, just the hope went out, the light went out of the eyes of the world. And so, I mean, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. I mean, why drag this deeply depressing material in front of people and charge them $25, when, you know what I'm saying?
I think people have the right to be depressed, that's what I think. And why should you deprive them of that right?
Well, you're successful at it. Big jerk.
Actually, I think the verse poem itself, it's dark on one level, but it's full of hope.
Yes.
It's full of hope, and it's actually it's about conversion, and it's about conversion. I say I've got to avoid spoilers, all right? But there are surprising conversions going on. Well, I've let the cat out the bag about obviously Sassoon's conversion. And that's clearly a large part of the drama, but I think there's a bigger part of the drama, which also involves conversion, which I can't really say anything about. I think it's actually a work that takes us, it's like Dante, right? It takes us into the inferno, it takes us into hell, but only to bring us out the other side, and through some sort of purgatorial experience, give us a fleeting glimpse of paradise itself.
Please watch the second part also.